This would be about 100 years old, and from what I've heard within the family, it was owned by my grandfather's uncle, Edgar Dewdney, who was a very famous person in the West Kootenay, and that he built the Dewdney Trail, and the city of Trails is named after the Dewdney Trail. It almost fits me.
Sam McBride is curious, and that curiosity has driven him to learn more about his roots, working to piece together his family's history, one ancestor at a time.
Ever since I was a small boy, my mother and father would talk about famous people in the family, but they could never identify the relationships. They'd say, we know we're related somehow, but we don't know the exact relationship. And about 20 years ago, I decided to make it a hobby. I was inspired by a great uncle who was very, very keen on it. And I began writing a lot of letters, and this was before the internet, so it was a totally different approach to family history, dealing with a lot of books and microfilm and things like that.
Using old family keepsakes and letters, McBride was able to put together enough information to publish a book on a great uncle who had served in both world wars. For this family historian, the book was just the beginning, sparking an interest to learn more about his lineage.
But the further you go back, the more stories there are to tell. And so it's an endless hobby because you can never reach the end. As soon as you find out more about one generation, it opens up a whole new opportunity for stories.
McBride's interest in genealogy eventually brought him to the West Kootenay Family Historian Society, a group that was formed in 1988.
Our group calls ourselves the Family Historians because though we are the genealogy group, we like to build on the genealogy, which is the basic birth, marriage, death, the vital statistics, identifying who your ancestors are. We add to it by collecting stories. It's detective work, basically. You're the detective trying to identify and verify information. One of the problems that people that do my type of work do is that they run into a lot of errors and misleading information. So it's a real challenge to separate the factual from the inaccurate.
And for budding family historians, McBride advises to always start with what you know, beginning with your parents and grandparents.
From that, you can go further back. If you go back to the early 1900s and into the 1800s, there are censuses that are public information. After 90 years, the census information becomes public, and you can see what your ancestors, say great-grandparents, where they were living and what children were living with them at the time.
It does take a certain amount of dedication and commitment to trace one's genealogy, but the effort can be well worth the results.
If you want your descendants, children to know about, you want them to know about their grandparents, especially if grandparents aren't alive anymore. You want to share the information, and they'll know themselves that much better if they know the stories of their ancestors.
People interested in family history, wanting to learn more about their roots and how to uncover their family's story, can get in touch with the West Kootenay Family Historians online at wkfamilyhistorians.wordpress.com. For Go Kootenays in Castlegar, I'm Christina Krichkowski.